Hey, welcome to the Art Condition Podcast, a weekly show that will discuss the business, community, and often undiscussed stress and mental health concerns of being a professional artist, or even a serious hobbyist. I'm Joby. I've been in the tattoo and illustration professions for 25 years. My co-host is Moose, a data analyst, social media manager, and art agent. If you enjoy the content, please consider visiting the Patreon page in the show notes to help support the effort. Or if that's not an option, please like, subscribe, leave a good review, or just share with your friends. And definitely go visit the links of our guests on this episode. Thanks for listening, and have a great day. This week, we are talking to Kiri Leonard. Kiri is both a very accomplished artist and a very accomplished business person. So in this episode, we unpack some very important topics for the independent artist. We discuss the concept of a traffic funnel and how important it is to have all your content online point to one destination. We talk about how to make it all line up and feel natural so you don't come off as a high-pressure salesman. We also talk about the variety of products and services she has arranged and how they translate into a variety of revenue streams and how she prioritizes them for a healthy balance. We touch on a few topics you may have heard before, like Kickstarter, Patreon, and YouTube, but Kiri has some new insights for these, and it's always good to get different perspectives from different people. One housekeeping item. For everyone watching on YouTube, you may have noticed that we have gone back to the format of single full-length episodes rather than breaking them into two parts. Our intent behind making them two-parters was to offer a more digestible experience for the viewer and to try and play nice with the algorithm. We had mixed feelings about the results, so we're trying the old way again. But in the end, you're the opinion that matters. So let us know what you think. Okay, here's the interview. Enjoy. Kiri, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just jump right into it. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into art. Was this something that you always knew that you wanted to do, or you switch paths in there somewhere? How did you get into it?
I'm originally from Denmark, and I'm currently living in the US. I'm a fantasy and fairy tale illustrator, an artist and creator. And I did not know that art was something you could do for a living until I was in my mid-20s. So I was kind of late at getting into it. I did enjoy drawing a lot in my teenage years, but I didn't realize that it could be a career path. And so in my mid-20s, when I found out, in Denmark, there's not a lot of art schools. I did attend a couple there, but I wasn't learning what I wanted to learn because I wanted to learn how to kind of all the classic skills for anatomy and all of that good stuff, which was not taught at the school that I went to. So I started looking at schools abroad, and I ended up applying to a school in New York City and was lucky enough to get accepted in. It was Pratt Institute. And then I immigrated to the US to pursue a career in arts, and it very luckily for me panned out.
And you said that you had been doing a little bit of art prior to that?
Yeah, like I always enjoyed painting and drawing ever since I was a child, but I was not very good at it. I never took it seriously until then. It was just something I dabbled in as a hobby.
All right. Well, once you decided this was the path for you, you just went in full steam.
Yeah, I did. I was playing on an online role-playing server called Dragon Coast at the time, and there were a couple of other artists there that had studied at Pratt Institute, and I saw their artwork on the game forum, and I was just blown away by it. And then I asked them like how they learned to draw so well, and they told me about the school, and that's how I kind of had my eyes open to the whole thing.
Yeah. Is that the thing that would you say that that's the thing that really pushed you forward? Like that's what the thing that made it click for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. At that point, I was like, "Oh, I want to be an artist," and then I just put in all time and effort into learning how to do that. At that time, I was working at a retail store, like a grocery store in Denmark, and I was very unhappy in my life, so it changed everything around.
So then between art school and you're a fully independent artist now, yeah? Like full-time,
Yeah,
completely sort of like
yeah,
self-sufficient. Um,
yeah.
can you kind of briefly cover your trajectory from like the end of art school into being fully independent? Like what was your sort of career
Yeah.
path in between?
So I only went to art school for 1 year because tuition costs in the US is extremely high and I could not afford it. I had to take out a big loan just to cover that first year, and after that, I was just like, "Yeah, I can't do this. That's way too much." So my choice was either I move back to Denmark, or I just try to go full-time freelance. I was able to immigrate to the US because I had fallen in love with an American. We got married at the time, so I got a green card. That's how I was able to stay in the country. And then I just started working as a freelance artist, and it was really hard the first 5 to 6 years, it took before I was making enough of a income to really, help out with our bills and stuff. My husband took care of most of the bills, in those early years, and we lived off very little money as well, just kinda scraping by, but slowly as my artwork improved and as I got to know, the business more and got to know other artists and things like that, I grew my career and found more clients and then it, started actually working out really well.
And what are your preferred niches to work in? And have you sort of like always known, like what your focus wanted to be in terms of material and subject matter and that sort of thing? Like your voice as an artist?
Yeah, I started out really enjoying color pencil, and color pencil is still like my first love, and I love drawing with color pencils. But it didn't serve me very well when it came to doing professional artwork. So I started dabbling in digital art very early on. Um, and slowly transitioned into doing full-time digital, which is now my preferred medium. Mostly because I'm just more trained with that than I am with traditional work. I can still draw traditionally, I can paint traditionally. I've done acrylic paintings and things like that. I just enjoy digital more. So that's why I'm focusing on that. And it has a lot of benefits when it comes to when you're doing client works and there's a lot of revision and things like that. It's a lot easier to do revisions digitally than it is traditionally.
Yeah, I was curious because you do your drawings traditionally, and then
Yeah.
I assume you scan them in, and then you finish them digitally.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
how long have you been doing that process as opposed to doing everything traditional?
Well, I've always done my drawings traditionally. So it's kinda like always, but then, I've also like, sometimes if I'm on a really short deadline, I will just sketch digitally, but I do enjoy sketching in hand a lot more than doing it. So as a core part of my process, I'll say it's been like that maybe for the past 5 years.
So, as an independent artist, you have a lot in common, I think, with every other independent artist in the world. Uh, um, Not that this was specific to artists, but pandemic, the COVID pandemic, like really trashed a lot of
Yeah,
things for artists.
yeah, it's been hard.
um,
It's been hard with conventions especially.
yeah, so it's definitely worth a little like before and after, I think, to discuss what your life before COVID
So
was like, and um, what was your main distribution of attention, as far as like where you put your focus, and what were your major sources of income prior to that hitting?
so my income is split between being one third client work, one third being my online shop, and then one third being like conventions and um, Patreon, YouTube, things like that. And because of that, because I've never been that big, I've only dabbled in conventions for like the last couple of years, seriously, like where it became a sizable part of my income. So it didn't cause too many problems for me with the pandemic. My main convention was Gen Con. They did an online version, and that actually panned out really well. The online Gen Con, I made the same amount that I made at the regular Gen Con, so
Hmm.
I was
That's great.
happy in that regard. And my client work, like because I wanted to be a fully independent artist, I've been paring down on client work. So I only have one client that I work for now. Um, and it's an ongoing project. It's been ongoing for a couple of years and it continued through that year. So also didn't have any impact that way. And then in the spring of 2020, I took a marketing course for artists by Emily Jeffords, which was absolutely amazing. It's that blueprint every artist wants to how do you actually sell your work online. And I learned so much from it. So I tripled my shop income just from what I learned in that. So during 2020, my in the last part of it, I was able to just sell a lot of work online, and that really helped out.
What was that name again?
Emily Jeffords. The course is called Making Art Work. It opens in the spring. There's a wait list you can sign up for. Her website is emilyjeffords.com. She's a fine artist, but the things that you learn in her course are, it's just a blueprint. You can apply it to whatever kind of work you do. If you want to sell work online, it's about growing newsletters. Running an online shop, how to write your copy, how to take good photos, how to connect with your audience, how to build your Instagram, all of those things. It covers everything and it's incredible. It's a little bit pricey
Yeah.
I think for art students, it's about $1,000, but you are going to make that money back many, many fold if you follow the stuff you learn.
What
It
is
does
what is it for
require that you have-
non-students?
Sorry?
No, I'm sorry, I talked over you. What is it for non-art students?
The price is the same. It's $1,000.
She's meant for art students. It happens to be expensive.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
I'm sorry.
'cause
Okay.
art students don't tend to have a lot of extra income to
Right.
spend.
Gotcha.
But it's a really good investment, definitely. If you can swing it, it's worth it.
You mentioned
Yeah.
doing really well at Gen Con. How did you swing it to make as much as you did in person? Did you do additional stuff on Twitter or other social media platforms?
No, I've dipped into my Instagram. I paid to advertise some posts on Instagram, which really paid off. And other than that, I think so. If you don't have an online sales funnel set up, it could be hard to utilize those conventions. The way Gen Con had done it is they build it a lot around Discord, and they would link. They set up this portal, online portal that would link back to all of the artists that were participating. So they also funneled traffic to your website, and then I set up a landing page on my website and kind of made a whole online event out of it. And I interviewed a couple of artists on my YouTube to promote it too. And then I made special sales, like print bundles and things like that that were available only for the convention. And then I utilized my newsletter to inform my audience that this was happening and build it up on my social media. And a lot of my fans seem to really like that.
So did you do anything to adjust, like have additional sources of income to make up for the loss of convention sales? Like in general, not all of them were as successful as Gen Con, I assume.
Well, because I haven't done a lot of conventions, I didn't really lose out on sales. I've only been doing Gen Con, then I've done Wizard World Austin, which I stopped doing just because it wasn't very well organized. And then I used to do New York Comic Con when I lived in New York, but since I don't live there anymore, it's a pain to travel that far. So because I haven't been as reliant on conventions, it just hasn't been a problem.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's at least not the worst thing in the world, right? Like all things considered. Yeah,
I've been really, really lucky compared to other artists in that regard.
absolutely. We know of several that have lost like the majority of their income. So it went
Yeah,
losing
it's awful.
it's losing a minority of income. That's good. Um,
I
we
think
do.
important for artists in that regard is that to have that online aspect of your business where you are focusing on making sales online too, so that when something like this happens, you're not, in trouble. A lot of artists found themselves in the situation that now they had to start focusing on building audience and setting up sales funnels and all of that during this year suddenly because that convention sales were gone.
But you had always been doing that. You always been set. You had already set the funnel. Just
Yeah, I
real quick.
already had that whole structure built, and then that course I took helped a lot with how to utilize that better.
So just give a 10-second crash course. What is the funnel that you have set up?
Well, so you want to have your hub basically, which is going to be your website, where you want to have your shop, and then you want to use your social media platforms to lead people to your website. Once they're on your website, you want to get them to sign up for your newsletter. The best way to do this is, give them something of value. In my case, you could download a free sketchbook that has 24 pages of sketches and stuff you can't find elsewhere. So if you want to have that sketchbook, that's the only way to get it. So that's like a good way to get people to sign up. And then you promote that also on your social media platforms. And then I have a YouTube channel too that I'll link back when I do videos. I'll link back to my website and to my Patreon from there.
Which social media platforms do you think are like most beneficial? Like which ones are most worth your time?
For me, it's been Instagram has been really, really good. Pinterest, I heard, is really good long term because people that are on Pinterest generally are looking to buy things. Um, and it's also, I think, Pinterest is visually focused. It's also a platform that I think many artists kind of forget about. It is important to have really good pictures for Pinterest. Another one, depending on how hard skin you have, is Twitter. Twitter can be good. Twitter can also be a really difficult place to be. So
It's interesting that you said that Instagram has been your kind of go-to. The more and more the common consensus seems to be that Instagram isn't so great for artists. Usually you hear people saying, oh, it's not doing anything for me, but your experience has been different. Do you think that there are any, or do you have in mind any particular like contributions to that, like why Instagram has done so well for you, or just luck?
well, I think you got to engage with your audience over there. And this really goes for any social media platform. If you're not engaging with your audience, you're not going to see them come back. And another thing is that you don't need to have massive numbers to be able to make sales. You don't need to have like 100,000 people following your Instagram or your Facebook for that matter to make sales. You can get by, with 10,000 or with 5,000 as long as those people are people that really truly love your work. So you got to find those people, and then you got to make a connection with them, and that's a hard part, right? Finding those people that really enjoy what you're doing, and kind of build those bridges.
Yeah, I think the majority of the issues have been like Instagram has so few direct links available to people. You can either swipe up on stories if you're over 10,000, and you have that link in your profile, but it's not like Twitter where every post can contain a link that people can just click on. So it's not as easy of access to it.
If you sign up for later.com, you can get a LinkedIn bio profile where they create basically like a duplicate of your Instagram, where you can create links on each of those pictures then. So it'll work like you have a mirror of your Instagram and everything will link back to whatever you want it to link to. That's one way to do it. The other thing is, again, you have your website hub, which is, where all your artwork and your shop lives. And then you only need that one link. So everything you do, you just like click the link in my profile. It's going to take you to where I live on the internet.
That's a good point.
So this is maybe jumping ahead just a little bit, but you have your website as your main hub, but Patreon is pretty important to you too. So do you have any sort of like, do you have any guidelines as far as like when you direct to Patreon instead of your website, or do you find it pretty easy of a flow through from your website to your Patreon?
So for Patreon, the way I use that, I usually direct directly to that from my Instagram. And it depends on what I'm focusing on at the moment. So sometimes I will focus on making specials for Patreon. Maybe I have limited edition prints coming out, or maybe I have like a special sign up offer for Patreon. So at the time that I'm promoting that, I won't even link back to my website. I'll only link to my Patreon. And then maybe a couple weeks later, I'm gonna do a shop sale or something instead. And at that time, I'll link to my shop and to my website instead.
So link
So it's like
one
an ebb and flow.
yeah, one more thing on that. Do you have a sense of how to avoid oversaturating your viewers, so you're not just like do you give a bit of space between when you're promoting one thing and when you're promoting another thing, and how do
Yeah,
you
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. You wanna make sure that it's not just like sell, sell, sell all the time. That gets exhausting. You wanna make sure you're actually making stuff for people that they're gonna be excited about. But, as artists, what we're making, is what gets people excited, and if you're making beautiful work, you're gonna find that people are gonna want it and wanna see it and wanna engage with it and wanna be part of it. So, like for instance, for your Instagram, a good thing is to set up a schedule. So, say you structure out 12 posts, and then you have like, okay, so one day is going to be my work process, another day is going to be my sketches, another day is going to be photos from my studio, another day might be like throwback to old artwork. Then the fifth day, it's going to be sales. It's going to be like, oh, hey, here are prints you can buy. Or maybe if you're working on a new piece over a period of time, you show the process of how this piece is coming together. And then at the end of it, you could be like, oh, hey, now you can go buy this piece here.
So as we said earlier, you draw traditionally and you sell those originals. How have the original sales of those sketches? Oh, sorry, not sketches, drawings been
They've been
for you?
really good. So the way I do that is once a year, I have what I call a drawing adoption. And then I'll take all of the drawings that I've done during the past year, I mat them out, and I put them up for sale in my shop for like this big event. And then I send out newsletters. I promote that ahead of time, of course, to tell my audience about it. I show pictures of it as I'm matting and as I'm framing them. I'll show pictures on my Instagram and I'll talk about the stories behind the different drawings. I'll show the pieces, like the paintings they might have ended up becoming. And then, yeah, and then you have the sales event, and that usually runs for like a week or two.
And people do tend to enjoy traditional drawings in general. So there's not a whole lot of opportunities for people to get original drawings.
And yeah, no, there's not. I have a very limited amount of that since I'm mostly digital. So it is a special item in that regard.
We do have a question here in chat asking just a quick start. Like, where does someone start when they want to build a website? Do you have a general platform you suggest?
I'm using WordPress, but I would honestly suggest that you start with Squarespace because Squarespace seems to be very easy to use. It seems to have everything integrated as it is. With WordPress, you're going to have to buy a lot of extra plugins. At least that's what I've run into, and that gets kind of problematic. So I would suggest Squarespace.
There's some good tutorials out there for Squarespace as well, just for people who don't know how to start up a store on their own. So you mentioned that you're not terribly reliant on conventions, but do you have any pending conventions that were rolled over from last year?
Yeah, Gen Con rolled over. And I don't know how things are going to look this year. They're still kind of biding their time on that, whether it's going to be an in-person event or if it's going to be online again.
Yeah, and it's really a pickle because if the state doesn't declare that they can't have it, then the convention still is kind of bound to try it anyway.
Yeah, and that's troublesome, and I think that's why they ended up canceling so late last year because they were waiting for the state to kind of make the call on that. Like, there's so much money and so many businesses rolled up in those big events, and I feel bad for the organizers because it must be so stressful to try to balance all of that.
If it comes down to it, I know Gen Con is like it's a big event, and there's a good amount of money for the artists, you included, whether it's online or offline. Uh, are you Do you have any feeling on whether you go if they do announce it and not announce that they're going to be holding it in person?
I'm not gonna go this year, no.
So fingers crossed that it gets called off again,
Yeah,
pushed back.
yeah, I kinda hope so. I think with everything going on with the pandemic, I just, no, I don't wanna do it. And another thing is that I'm a very introverted person, so I don't really enjoy conventions, and that's
Mm.
part of why they're not a big part of my business. Because during that time you're at a convention, you're on 24/7. There's like a lot of talking and engaging with people, and you gotta hang out with people afterwards. And it just, for me, it drains my energy so much. I need my alone time.
So, what have you done to tailor your career to being an introvert?
Great question.
Well, I work at home in my own studio, all day long, and, I see my cats, and it's great.
It's good to have studio pets, but
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I mean, if you are not introverted and you enjoy being around people, you may also enjoy being, in a studio environment more, maybe for gaming companies doing concept art or things like that. So with the internet, we have so many options for how we want to structure our careers and our life now. Um, if you do want to be an independent artist, you can rent out a studio space along with some other artists that way, so you do get to have that human contact. Um, and although I am introverted, I have immensely enjoyed that my husband has been working from home this year, so I have had company, so it is less lonely because it can get very lonely when you're just working on your own.
I was going to ask if that convention of Gen Con was the only one that you really still sort of set your sights on at all, or are there any other ones?
I've been considering Dragon Con, and I actually got into it last year too, but ended up canceling because the pandemic was so bad at the time, and they were very late to cancel their show, so didn't go to that one. I haven't been to it before, but I've heard very good things about it sales wise. And then I want to look into more local events in Texas, just because it's so much easier to travel to local events. I kind of miss that from New York City. Because there's so much in going on in New York, so it's a lot easier going to shows. I used to go to Special Edition in New York as well, along with New York Comic Con, and there's a bunch of there's the MoCA Festival by the Society of Illustrators, and then there's also some local Brooklyn things going on there. So I have done events previously, but I've just pared down on it.
You say there is a lot of stuff happening locally in Texas. You're in Austin, right? So
Yeah,
Austin
yeah,
is sort
yeah.
of like the cultural mecca of Texas. They're like
Yeah,
this like
that's a good way
island
to.
of this island of uh, beauty and craft and great things happening there. Is that where most of the local stuff that you have in mind is happening, or is there
Yeah,
even like
yeah,
spread out more?
Austin, San Antonio, which is only an hour and a half away. There's a small town here called Georgetown, which also have like a market once a month, where they have a lot of creatives and crafts people come out to. Because Austin is so big on artists, there's a lot of stuff going on there. There's a witches market where I heard artists that are doing kind of like goth and tarot themed work do fairly well, as I understand. And then there's some galleries and things like that, of course.
So let's talk a little bit about how you've made a living as an independent artist. One of the frequent ideas that comes up is doing Kickstarters, and you've done, I believe, two. The most recent one was 2 years ago, if I looked up the correct profile.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, Kickstarter is a great way, really great way to do it.
So why haven't you done more since? I guess is the question. If it was successful for you previously,
Because I haven't finished the project yet.
so they're kick finishers rather than Kickstarters.
Yeah, if you're gonna do a Kickstarter, I highly recommend that your project is done and ready to go by the time you start looking for funding. Because otherwise, you may get burned on it, your audience is gonna get burned on it, and people are gonna be unhappy and they're not gonna want to back other people in the future. Like, it's just not good. Just have that finished product done before you start trying to fund it.
I believe your last project that you funded on there was a calendar, and you have since done other. Oh, I'm sorry, it was a sketchbook.
Yes, yes.
Then I did poor research. I apologize for that.
So-
Uh, so have you been planning on doing other sketchbooks since, or?
Yes, I'm gonna be doing one this year, I think, probably. But I'm also working. So I've been working on this project called Montague Mouse for years and years and years. And I'm hoping that this is gonna be the year that I finish it, and then I can do a Kickstarter maybe at the end of this year or in the spring of the next year, depending on how it comes along.
So with this project, where did the idea come from? How did you know that you wanted to do Montague Mouse?
I drew him one evening in 2013 when I first was starting out on my art career, and I brought this drawing of him to New York Comic Con, and there was a publisher for, I think it was Schiffer Publishing, that saw the drawing. And he was so in love with it, and he was like, "You gotta write a story about this character. You gotta like write a story and contact me." And then I kind of thought about that for like years. And then I moved to Texas, and the first drawing I made after moving to Texas was another drawing of this character. And then I was like, yeah, there's the story there. And then it just kind of grew from that piece.
People seem to really
Yeah.
feel strongly about mice in general, whether it's Mouse Guard or Montague or.
Yeah,
what do
that's
you
Yeah, the chat got like super fired up. Like you dropped the Montague name and now people are like, take all of
take
my money.
Mice are adorable.
So, what are you doing to? I hate to use the word monetize, but to monetize the story.
Well, it's going through my Patreon. So my Patreons are supporting all of the projects that I make. So they're getting kind of first look on new art for it. They're getting painting tutorials on how I do the illustrations for it. They get to see some of the writing. My patrons can read the first couple of chapters for the book already. I also have an agent who has been shopping it around to publishers. It didn't get picked up, unfortunately, so that's why I'm kind of like, oh, now I'm just gonna do it myself, and that's actually okay, because one of the reasons I don't do a lot of client work is because I don't like people telling me what to paint. And it's the same thing with this, like once you're working with a publisher, you gotta be good at teamwork, and I am perhaps not as strong at that. I'm really good at doing my own stuff, so.
What is it that you're doing to, aside from like the aesthetic? What do you do to get the audience to buy in to this world that you're creating?
It's really just the aesthetic of it, and it's sharing the story snippets. We as human beings really latch on to stories, and I love stories. That's one of the things that always get me engaged with like other artists and their work. And if you write good stories or interesting captions, or your artwork is telling a good story, like, I just love it. And I find that with my audience, that's the same thing. They read these story snippets and they connect with it, and they just kind of fall in love with that world that's being created. It's like world building.
So, where did your narrative background come from to support this endeavor?
Growing up in Denmark, there's like a lot of folklore and fairy tales. I think the most famous Dane is probably H.C. Andersen, fairy tale author. It's just how I grew up. Like my mom always told a lot of stories. I had so many children's books as a kid, so it's always been a big part of my life.
So as you're building the large project, the umbrella project of Montague Mouse, are there smaller things that you've done like along the way, or is it just leading up to that the one big push?
Yeah, I'm terrible at getting distracted by side projects, which is why this book is not done yet.
All right.
Because I've been doing the calendars and the sketchbook in between that. I've been doing side projects with clients as well. Yeah, and one thing is, you have to make money to get by unless you want to get a regular job. So you're going to need to have these side projects as a way to, pay your bills.
The calendar, I imagine, is one of the side projects that you do regularly.
Yeah, yeah.
Are these illustrations that you do along the way normally, and you just put them into? I hate to use the word "just," but you put them into the calendar, and it's not a whole lot more extra work, or is it you do extra illustrations so that you can have a calendar?
So what you first said would be the smart way to do a calendar, and I really recommend that that's how artists do that going forward. That's not how I've done it up until this year. I made personal projects out of creating 12 illustrations for calendars. The first one I did was a fairy pinup calendar, which was in 2012, and I just sold that in my shop at the time. It didn't make a lot of money. I didn't have a very large audience, and my work was not that good back then. But it paid for itself. And then a couple years later, I did one with trolls that did a little better. Also just sold that in my shop. And then I did a unicorn calendar, which was was that my first Kickstarter? I think it might have been. And that one did really well in Kickstarter. It made about $14,000. Sold a lot of copies of it. And after that, a lot of people reached out to me to hire me for doing unicorn related client work. So that was awesome. So yeah, personal projects, really good way to go. One thing is, when you're starting out, at least, don't do personal projects that are like, oh, I'm gonna write and illustrate my own book, like I did with my Montague Months book, because it's too big when you're just starting out. It's too big. You're gonna get overwhelmed. You're not gonna finish it, and you're gonna beat yourself up. So do smaller projects like a calendar. A calendar is like a great personal project to start with.
What are some other ideas that you would have for if they're not able to put together 12 illustrations for a calendar? What else could someone do? Just brainstorming.
You could do a portrait series. You could, if there's a fairy tale you really like, illustrate that. Pick like some of the scenes from your favorite story or your favorite movie. Make a series of that. Of course, be careful with fan art because there's like the whole you can't sell that. That's why fairy tales are great because they're not copyrighted. And you could do a postcard series. You could just do a poster series. Do like 3 or 5 illustrations of posters that go really nicely together. Um, do a series of book covers from your favorite books, perhaps. Make a series of mugs could be fun, or a series of pins. Like there's so many. Do some fun T-shirt designs. There's so much you can do.
Yeah, I think the problem is like when someone actually needs to do things. That's the time when they're like, I have no ideas.
Yeah, that's when your creativity and your brainstorming
Yeah.
power seems to just nosedive. You're like, I hate money, money, money.
I'm a big proponent of hiring yourself or picking yourself. If you want clients to hire you to do a project, you really have to be able to do projects on your own too. You got to be able to be your own client and hire yourself to do a good job. Because if you can't do a good job for yourself, how are you going to do a good job for clients?
It's interesting that you just said, don't take on a really large project as one of your first personal projects, because I know you've also done a tarot deck in the past, and
Yeah.
so I've recently become very inspired and gripped with the desire to do a tarot deck. It is one of the first projects that. What's that?
It's a great thing to do. It's a great thing to do, though. If you can, you know, if you can sit down and do 79 illustrations, that's a lot of work. If you can hold yourself to that and make deadlines for yourself, I say do it. Tarot is a great thing to do. It has a massive built-in fan base already, which is awesome. So that makes it easier to monetize. Um, and it's very straightforward because you get the Rider Waite tarot deck, which is the template basically for tarot. You study, the symbolism in those cards, and you use that as your guide for creating your illustrations.
Yeah, and I've also been trying to brainstorm ideas, and I think this could maybe be useful too. That if you do have a larger project, breaking it out into smaller things along the way can be useful, because I'm, think kind of sort of what you were just saying with, make a series of posters or whatever, so I'm thinking of like, well, how can I break the larger 78 cards down into, sections or groupings of posters or postcards and stuff like that. So that could maybe be a way that,
Great
or I'm
idea.
hoping, my plan is, and I'm hoping that it pans out so I can use it as like a proof of functionality, that a larger project can only almost be made more manageable by chunking it into smaller ones and then making those chunks offerings in themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. With tarot, specifically, if you want to start out breaking it into smaller things, you start with the major arcana because those are the most popular cards and the ones with that people are most familiar with. And then you can pick the cards that speak the most to you. Say pick 5 or 10 or however many of them that you think speak the most, and do a series with them, starting with that. And you'd be like, oh, this is going to be a poster series for now, but if it has interest, you can keep going and actually make the cards of it.
And not to make this about my tarot project, I was wanting to tie that back into the Montague Mouse thing. How close are you to like being like done with that and ready to go, or do you still have a ways to go? And
I have a ways to go. I have half of the story is written. I have the full outline of how the story is going to go. So my goal is to have the rest of it written by March or April, and then I'm going to do the artwork. I have about, I think, maybe 25 to 30 illustrations for it at this point. And I want to do at least double that, if not more. I'll find that number out as I have the story written out.
How do you find the balance between how many illustrations you need relative to the story points?
I just kind of like feel my way through that, which is not necessarily the best way of doing it, because as I'm writing, I see these scenes in my head, and then I'll be like, "Oh, this one would be really fun to illustrate." Problem is that then the next scene would also be really fun to illustrate, and the next one, and the next one, and suddenly I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna have 200 illustrations."
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Do you have anything similar in mind for chunking that into smaller things, or is it just going to be what it is when it comes out?
It's just going to be what it is. Once the writing is done, I can pick out, okay, what are the key scenes here? There's going to be at least one illustration for every chapter in it, if not more. So then I'm just going to list down what these illustrations are going to be and then just get to work.
Shane in the chat had a question related to this. He said, does Kiri find herself having an idea about a side project and being more excited about it than her main project? And is there any fatigue from having one main project for several years?
Oh my goodness, yes. Let me introduce you to my other now main project, Lock the Legend.
All right.
Which, I had Montague. I was working on it. I was happy. I had my whole career for years planned out around that. And then, boom, Lock the Legend popped up in my head. And then I felt like I had split personality, and I was so frustrated because the voice of it is so different from Montague. But I love it. I love it so much. I'm so in love with it. And I just want to work on it all the time. But I need to get Montague done.
Do you have a...
And so you're putting off this other idea. Are you keeping track of like your ideas for it, or how do you like maintain that passion for it while you're working on the other project?
So it's spurred from a D&D campaign, and we play D&D every week basically. So it's kept alive that way. Another thing is that I haven't been able to stop myself from working on it. So I actually have like over 200 pages written for that story already, and I have all of the artwork planned out for that story already, and I've done a good chunk of it too. So I'm kind of working on two big projects right now, which is difficult because you run up against, do I have enough time to get everything done, and then have client work and all the other little things I'm working on in between that. So it's definitely challenging. There is absolutely some fatigue, especially when you're working on one thing you're really excited about, but you feel guilty over that you're not working on the other thing that you feel like you should be working on. Um, and I think that's just being human, it's just sometimes we fall in love with stuff and we just can't help ourselves.
For sure, yeah. Do you have any particular like time management things that you implement to keep yourself on track, to make sure that Montague Mouse doesn't become totally abandoned? Like some scheduling things where you're like, this is the time that I have to work on
Yeah.
this.
Deadlines are gonna be like your friend here, and a lot of people are always like, "Oh, deadlines are the worst," but really deadlines are the best. Because if you don't have a deadline, you can just be like, "Oh, I'll work on it tomorrow. I'll work on it tomorrow." And suddenly years have passed and nothing have gotten done. So set deadlines, set hard deadlines for yourself and hold yourself accountable. Schedule out, when you want to have what done. During your week, find out how much time you have to spend on art and then portion that out. So for me, that means that um, on Monday, I'll do client work. Tuesday, I'll work on my personal project. Wednesday, I'm going to do administrative tasks, for instance. Then Thursday, I'm going to be doing client work again. Friday, I'm going to do personal. So that way you kind of like, okay, so those are.
So I know that you mentioned that you do a variety of side projects, but they're all like a different amounts of effort, and they're all different amounts of like payoff. Were there any that stand out to you as being really good reward of payoff to effort?
Yeah, the unicorn calendar, it's 12 illustrations, which accumulated in a Kickstarter. I was able to sell the original drawings along with other unicorn themed drawings I also had done. And then I was able to sell the calendar in my shop for the following year and make prints from it, to large prints that were larger than the calendar. So 12 illustrations like hand out to, make over $20,000 total. Probably even more. I don't have like the actual the full tally because it's been years. But yeah, great payoff on that. Um, Whereas something like the sketchbook, like I love sketchbooks. I really love sketchbooks. Um, but I felt that it ended up taking so much time to fill out the pages that I was spending time doing these sketches, to fill it up and to make it an interesting book rather than working on my main projects. So I ended up kind of struggling with that a little bit. The nice thing about sketchbooks, though, is again, you have it to sell for years and years. It's a great way to give people a look into your process. Personally, with artists that I admire and really like, I love seeing their sketches because it's so interesting to see those initial thoughts and see how the work comes to be. It can tell you a lot about an artist just seeing those early raw pieces. But yeah, calendar, better payoff, sketchbook, more work, less payoff.
Was the sketchbook something that you weren't doing it with the intent of it being a product that you would sell? Like, was it just like a personal sketchbook that you had, and then at the end of it, you just used what you had accumulated as something that you could then compile into it? Or were you like, okay, starting out, this is my idea for what this will be at the end of it?
Well, it's a collection of all of my sketches from the last 5 years. So I put it together with the intention of selling it, but it was work that I had already done and that was just sitting and not being used. That I was like, oh, why don't I compile all of this and actually make a nice thing out of it?
Oh, I see. Okay. So when you say like the work was more just like going back into your backlog and finding the stuff that you wanted to compile into it.
I also wanted to have new drawings for it just to
Okay.
because a lot of the drawings like people on my Patreon, for instance, had already seen. So I wanted to make sure there was some new stuff that they could um for them, but also to have original drawings to sell for the Kickstarter.
So many artists have a problem where they're scared to try something new. Like they're afraid if they've never drawn unicorns or posted unicorns publicly, they don't know if the audience will like the unicorns that they draw. Is it a matter of like taking that risk and putting out the 12 illustrations of a unicorn calendar, or stick to what you know, or try something that you're passionate about and see how that works? What advice would you give to somebody who needs to try something new?
Well, if you're an artist, um I am going to assume that you are first and foremost an artist because you love making art, and you probably started out loving making art for yourself. And it's because you have something inside you that you want to express. You want to, show these things that are in you, things that are meaningful to you. So it shouldn't matter how your audience initially reacts, because they can't see the full scope of what you're going to create. They don't have the ideas and the map in your head. They don't know what universe you're going to be bringing to life. So you gotta like push through that and do your work and make the thing, because they don't know what the thing is until you've made it. You're the guide. You have to show them by making this work.
And I think that Blake, Art of Blake out there somewhere is thinking, I'm personally attacked. Yeah, that's it. We've been,
I mean, it's something I struggle with too, and I think a lot of us do, especially in this day and age of social media, right? Because you feel that pressure to be like, oh, people really like seeing this thing. I get a lot of engagement, I get a lot of likes when I'm doing this thing, so maybe I should just do that. But if you're not passionate about that, don't get yourself caught in that trap. And especially with something with doing fan art and things like that. Fan art is a great way to get a lot of people on your social media quickly. It's a great way to get attention, but you can't. I'm gonna say you can't make a living off it, but you can. But in the long run, is that really what you want to be doing? Do you want to be painting someone else's stuff, or do you want to build your own thing?
and there's always a mix of it too, right? If you want to, you can draw Boba Fett, right? And you can draw Boba Fett looking like the Boba Fett stuff that already exists. You can draw Boba Fett sitting on a toilet, and people will buy that. But you can maybe you're more interested in Boba Fett as a knight rather than as a sci-fi character. Well, Star Wars is arguably space sci-fi, space fantasy anyway. But anyway, regardless, if you're not fully set on uh, making the thing because it's popular, the way it's made, so they can appeal to the fans that exist already, you can make it your own if you need to. If you need to grow your audience, sometimes fan art is the shortcut. It's not always the best shortcut, but sometimes it is one.
Yeah, it can actually be extremely helpful to lead people into what you're doing yourself. If especially if you're a fan of something that leads into your own personal project. For instance, Devin L. Kurtz is a wonderful artist on Instagram, and she's done a lot of anime fan art for I think it's The Last Airbender, and she gets like great engagement on those pieces. They're really beautiful. They're still in her own style, and that helps. Like putting out the pieces like that helps her to grow her audience. To then when she's doing like her personal work, which the style carries over, then you can introduce people to what you're doing. So it can be a great way to build your platform up.
Do you think that
Yeah.
there's any merit to that fear that a lot of artists have that no one's going to want to buy it? I mean, are there places that artists can go to where people just aren't going to want to follow them?
Well, it's not just a fear, because it comes from truth. Because sometimes you make stuff that people are not going to buy, and you gotta find the people that like what you're doing. But you also have to realize that there is that tipping point where is your work good enough? Because sometimes it's just not there yet, and you need to spend more time practicing the fundamentals and getting good before you're gonna have people really connect with what you're creating.
Okay, so that's interesting. Do you think that it's then just a matter of technical ability at that point, or
Not
could it
always.
yeah.
Sometimes it's a matter of marketing. Sometimes your work is already there, but you are not sharing it in a way that people are, seeing it.
Yeah, I can think of a few people off the top of my head who spend hundreds of hours working on something and then 5-10 minutes showing it to people.
Okay, that's
putting it in
enough out of you.
places.
I don't want to hear any more
Yeah,
of this
exactly.
nonsense from it's just stop talking. So is it just to be clear, is it never or like very rarely subject matter? Like, can we just clarify that like subject matter is probably just like not going to be the impediment for you, barring things that are just like.
I can't clarify that because it depends on what your subject matter is. It depends on which space you're in. So, for instance, if you like to paint gory skeletons, there's going to be a lot less people who want to buy that and hang that on their wall than if you're painting fluffy unicorns. That's just a fact.
You'd have to go to a metal concert or something, I guess, if you wanted to find your people.
Go to a metal concert, or you reach out to horror authors and you share your work on their blogs. You got to find these spaces where the kind of work that you do, where the people that will enjoy that, find the spaces where they're hanging out and share it there.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's sort of the point that I want to drive in, is that's the key feature of that isn't necessarily that your subject matter is bad, but like where you're showing it to is more likely the bad thing.
Yeah, and some place like Instagram, then it could be about finding the right hashtags. It could be about doing the right presentation. You can do beautiful drawings, but if you are taking like crappy cell phone photos in like an unlit room of them, it's not going to look as good as if you spend time actually, styling it nicely and taking a good picture with a good camera.
So we want to shift gears a little bit towards your Patreon. Like it's one of the main places that you want to send your people to be able to build your universe. How have you been able to direct people, find people to move there?
I think a bunch of the early patrons I had came actually from conventions, from doing New York Comic Con. I got a bunch from Gen Con as well, because the great thing about conventions is people meet you face to face. They get to have a conversation with you. So right there, they're connected. And you are too. You become invested in your audience as well. It's not a one-way street. So that's a great way to get people to sign up. Other than that, it's been through newsletters and just showing your artwork. And also, I find a lot of what people enjoy about the Patreon is that you get to see the process of how something is made. And to people who are not artists, that can be really magical. Or to art students, because they can learn from it. So it's a nice way to learn from other artists.
So I think that there's an issue, like some people will be streaming on Twitch and then plan to post that stuff to the Patreon. But since they've already been streaming it on Twitch, their process on Twitch, that posting it to the Patreon loses some of its value. Is there any other way that someone could get people to be interested in supporting their long-term project if they're already showing the process for free?
I disagree that it loses its value. I just put it on Patreon and be like, hey, if you support my Patreon, you're supporting the time that I spend here on Twitch.
Do you stream on Twitch too?
Fingers crossed people buy that, right?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
We already covered she's an introvert, and introverts don't stream on Twitch.
Fair enough. Well, they
I
do.
heard horrible
It looks
things
different,
about
though.
Hold on, Blake. I mean, Joey, what was that, Kiri? Most of that is the gaming side of Twitch. The art side of Twitch is generally really tame.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I haven't done it streaming. But really, streaming is just like running a podcast, and there are so many successful podcasts that are also on Patreon. I was part of one for a while that also had a Patreon, and all of the episodes were available for free on YouTube, but they also had a very thriving Patreon that made quite a bit of money.
That's true. I stand corrected. You've also been posting stuff to your YouTube channel. What was the driving force to start your YouTube channel?
It was just like it seemed like it was fun to do videos. I really enjoy watching vlogs, and I enjoyed kind of seeing people's day to day and things like that. So that's why I started my YouTube channel. And I found YouTube to be a wonderful place to also engage with people and to show them your artwork. One thing about YouTube, though, is I guess like many places on the internet, you gotta have thick skin because sometimes you're gonna get some really horrible comments.
Seeing some of those.
Oh yeah, the first comment I got on YouTube was a step-by-step guide to suicide. So
What? The first comment?
yeah,
That
Oh my
was
God.
really pleasant.
yeah. I was like, oh, okay, so that's the kind of space we're in here. But you also just you gotta adapt a zero tolerance policy with those things. These are your social media pages. There's gonna be a lot of people that like they don't know you. They're strangers on the internet. Don't give them your energy. Don't give them your time. So just you get negative comments, delete them. It's kind of the broken window effect. If you let them hang around. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I was about to start a thought, but go ahead and finish that.
Okay. Yeah, it's just like the broken window effect. You don't want to leave negativity around on your pages because it's just going to garner more of it.
Right. Yeah. Now I don't even remember what I was going to say. So it wasn't important.
I think that the issue is with people in the comment section is they think that in order for their words to have any effect, they have to be hyperbolic. Because if they are very even mildly subtle, that they want to say, maybe I didn't like this thing. They won't say it in a polite way because they're afraid that won't get the message across. So they just go to the nth degree to push it as far as it can go to say bad.
Well, we're also like you're very anonymous on the internet, so you can post whatever. I think a lot of people don't think that there are actually real people on the other end reading some of these comments. Another thing is that we are so used to everything being customized for us and being made to cater to us these days. So when you come across things that are not 100% to what you want and you want to see, like people are not very accepting of that.
So
people feel like everything should be for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I disagree with that, especially with like books and things like that. Like I don't read books to see myself in the books because I'm living my life. I don't need to see it in a book too. I read books to experience things that I can't experience in my own life.
You mean every book that I've ever read wasn't about me? I'm confused. What are we talking about? Your YouTube channel seems to do pretty well, like in terms of the audience that you have there does seem to be pretty engaged, and you get good views on things. And,
yeah,
and stuff.
I haven't been active on it for the last year, really, because I kind of ran into like a moment of being like, really concerned about privacy and things like that. So I stopped putting out videos, and also because it takes so much time to make videos. I want to spend time doing art and not time making videos because I'm first and foremost an artist. The YouTube channel did so well because I had one video that went viral that got over, I think, 1.5 million views.
Oh, wow.
It was how I learned to draw video, which showed my drawing from I was 5 years old up until the year it was made, which was 2017. And then I kind of talked about how I learned to draw and the art schools I went to and just basically my life up until that point. And I took it down again because I wasn't comfortable with the amount of attention it was getting, and also because of the thought that, there's these millions of strangers that now know my life story and they don't know me really, and I don't like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's the Introvert coming out in the
Yeah. And that's not necessarily like a good decision. It's a decision made from a place of fear, absolutely. But I'm, free to make those decisions, so I do.
Well, it's maybe not necessarily good or bad. It's what's good for your mental health at the time, and ultimately that's going to be the most important thing. So do you have plans in the future to continue with the YouTube? Because your videos are very nice, and it is really nice content.
Thank you very much. I do want to get into it again. But I've been thinking about making it less vlogs and more just kind of maybe painting processes or something like that. More focused just on the artwork and less focused on my life. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, because a lot of the audience that I have, both on YouTube but also on Patreon, also found me through YouTube as well. And it is, when you see vlogs, you feel more of a connection to people, because you get to see their life, and that's really fun. So I don't know.
Maybe like do the 80-20 rule. Cut down the amount of personal in the vlog down to 20% and keep that like surface level rather than going too deep.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
So do you think that it was mainly just the viral content that started driving traffic to your YouTube, or were there any particular things that you did to generate more viewership?
No, it was absolutely the viral video. I think that what made it go viral to begin with was the title, which was how I learned to draw, because there's a lot of people out there that want to know how to draw. Other than that, when it comes to things that go viral, people love to see process and development, and they love to see things that improve. They love to see time lapses. So it kind of hits on that when you have like drawings starting out from being, the drawings of a child to being the drawings of a professional illustrator. It's an interesting process to see. It's something I would love to see from other artists, and I think all artists should go make videos like that.
Do you have like a full, like how complete is the catalog of work from when you were 5 until now?
It's very complete.
Oh God, you're so much better of a, you're so much better at saving and documenting than I am, and a lot of other people that I know too. They're probably like, where did the last 20 years go? I don't even know where that artwork is.
That happened because I immigrated to the US, though. When like a lot, at least in the later years, before that, I wasn't as keen on documenting everything, except I happened to save all of my drawings. But when I moved to the US, I started documenting everything because my family and friends were back home and they can't be part of my life over here because I'm so far away. So way for my parents to see what I'm doing was for me to document everything. And that was also part of why I started doing the videos, because I wanted them to be able to see like my day to day and be part of my life still.
Well, I can imagine immediately after this airs, people are going to start firing up their how I learned to draw videos, and
I look forward to seeing them. Please tag me.
I'm gonna edit this section out because I want to do how I learned to draw, and I don't want anybody else catching on before I put mine out.
Do it though. I want to see it. You should all do it.
We'll release the unedited version of this podcast to the Patreon, and it'll have that in there.
With that Twitch thing, if you put your Twitch thing on Patreon, then you can always do like, hey, patrons get to have like an exclusive Twitch thing once a month, and that way they get a special reward.
The problem with that is you actually can't do private streams on Twitch. You can do private streams on Discord though.
Then just do it on Discord or do it on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. That's when I've thought about doing it before. That's the option, and the exclusive content with Patreon has always felt a little weird. I mean, I guess you could do like bonus episodes, but then it's like you have to. One of the guidelines that I often hear people making about Patreon is try to make as little like extra work as you can, and like a whole other episode per week, even if it was like short and quick. Just seems like
don't do it per week. Once a month. Once a month.
Yeah.
Per week, that's way too much.
I've also thought about
definitely a challenge with Patreon, like ending up. That's something I struggle a lot with my own Patreon, that it has created a lot of extra work where I've been like, I'm gonna have to pare some of it down again. I was doing monthly wallpapers for people, and I found that like I'm just not producing enough art to keep that going after having like 3 years of it.
So you were also doing some mail out stuff, like mailing out pins and things. Is that the thing that was causing?
I still have the pins, and that's just when you sign up for the $10 tier, you get a pin. That's not difficult at all. I did prints for a while, and the way I had that structured was not very well. I put out 3 pieces a month. People could pick what print they wanted from. And again, like I just ran into, I didn't have enough backlog of art to keep that going, and it ended up taking a lot of time with like custom, because I print everything at home. So a lot of times we're printing all of these pieces, packaging, shipping them out. I'm going to be introducing prints again this year, but I'm going to try a different format of doing it. And yeah, hopefully that's going to be better.
What's this new format that's going to reduce the amount of conjunction?
Well, first of all, I'm changing the size of them. So before they were 8 by 10, which meant that once I was shipping it internationally, the shipping cost was really high. Now I'm going to be doing 5 by 7 instead. I'm picking out 12 pieces ahead of time for the year that I'll all have printed by another printer right away. So I have them all ready to go. And then I had custom envelopes made to fit them that are also 5 by 7. So it's going to make it a lot easier to package them and send them out.
Going back to the YouTube thing real quick, do you have any impressions of YouTube as a source of revenue, or is that just not an option unless you have like the really, really, really big numbers?
No, YouTube is great for a source of revenue. I ended up getting sponsorships both from XP Pen and Wacom through my YouTube channel. And other than that, of course, there's like the ad revenue, which is very low. So like the video that I made that I had that went viral, which had like, again, 1.5 million views, about probably made like $500, which is, it's not a lot, you know? So don't count the ad revenue unless you have those really big numbers.
Mm. So you think it's more from like sponsorships and stuff that are going to be the
Yeah, sponsorships are great.
Did you get approached by XP Pen, or have you done anything to approach sponsors on your own behalf?
They approached me, same with Wacom, after seeing my YouTube channel.
Mm.
And you're going to find that if you start having an active YouTube channel, you're going to get a lot of emails from all sorts of companies. And you're going to have to be careful sorting through them. Because again, like they're looking for you to promote their products. And if their products are not in line with, you know, what you want to do, then it's not a good idea to do it.
Yeah, that's my favorite email, is the influencer email. It's like, oh, we see that you're an influencer in your blah, 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 and we would love to partner with you, and we're going to give you 30% off our bikinis. It's like, just like try a little research before you send this. And I don't want your bikinis. So you talked a little bit about the downside for YouTube. Were there any like big upsides that you could, aside from the obvious, like, you know, sponsorship revenue, like were there big upsides? Was there any sort of like crossover conversion to your other platforms?
Yeah, it had really good conversion that way. I did get a lot of new audience members from it that, you know, they really latched onto the videos, really enjoyed that, and then sought me out either on Patreon or Instagram, bought things from my shop. So that way it is a wonderful platform to really build that audience.
What, like, and do you have any other like points of advice for artists getting onto the platform? Any sort of like do's and don'ts or best practices?
You want to, as with when you're posting stuff anywhere, you know, you want to make sure it's good quality, what you're putting out there. Be careful about your privacy. Just YouTube is really a place where that's something that could be a big concern, and that both goes from how you structure your channel to what email address and stuff you have people contact you through. Just, you know, really be careful with that stuff on YouTube. There are some pretty horrendous stories of people that have had people show up at their house and things like that. You don't want to put yourself in that situation. And then I plan out ahead of time, you know, how much time you're willing to spend on it, because again, videos take a lot of time to do. Being a YouTuber is a full-time job in itself. So if you're going to be a YouTuber, you're going to be an artist too. You're going to do client work. You want to have time to do your own personal projects. Oh, hey, we're going to do a Patreon too. How about we also stream on Twitch? How much time is left in the day? So, you know, pick a couple of platforms, like pick 2 platforms that you enjoy and that you like engaging on and stick to those. And realize that YouTube is one that takes a lot more time than the other ones because videos take a lot of time. But it's also more powerful in that regard. There are artists that are able to make a living as artists solely because of their YouTube channels.
Yeah, I was thinking about modern day James, for example. He does stream sometimes on Twitch and sometimes on YouTube, but he went from, you know, he had a career, but now he makes most of his money through mentorships and tutorials that he doesn't even mention in the videos, but he still gets tons of offers, so he can charge a whole lot.
Yeah, exactly. Like YouTube is so powerful in that way.
And as far as privacy goes, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a story on Twitch where somebody was talking to their significant other who and didn't mute their microphone and was giving directions to their house.
Oh,
So um, it just have to, it's something that in this new world of connectivity you have to keep in mind. There's always somebody listening. Sometimes you're broadcasting it out actively. So
Oh, that's so horrible.
luckily we were able to highlight the episode. It's basically saving a copy of it and edit out that little bit and then delete the original. So
Oh,
if
that's good. Yeah, yeah. I've had to delete some stuff from videos before for when I was working on a podcast, just because there was some private stuff that came out in the video. So it's like, yeah, we don't want that out.
I think I was going to say about privacy. You just got to keep in mind that everybody's listening at all times, and that it's not always. It luckily, if it's just the people that are with you on live stream, they're your friends. So if it's especially if it's an art side of Twitch, like I was saying earlier, the the gaming side of Twitch is really hostile, especially to women, as you mentioned. But on the art side of Twitch, Allie Briggs is in chat, and she'll be one of the people who'll say like people
Really?
on the art Twitch are some of your biggest supporters and will be some of your most diehard fans.
That's awesome. That's really great.
So you have right now you have, as far as we're summing up what you've been working on, you have I'm sorry, I know it starts with this has Montague Mouse, and you have another project that is related to your D&D project. Those are your two big projects that you have in mind,
Yeah.
and you just released your calendar a few months ago.
Yeah, that was just like a little shop thing to put something out, and so that calendar is just my most popular illustrations from the last couple of years. And I didn't have time to put it on Kickstarter, which is why I didn't kickstart it. And as a result, have had a lot less sales than I would have had if I put it on Kickstarter. So if you're gonna do calendars, yeah, definitely Kickstarter.
How much additional effort would you put it as to putting it on a Kickstarter versus just on your webpage and socialing it out?
Well, it's at least 1 or 2 more months of work because you're gonna have to be promoting that Kickstarter a month ahead of time for it when it goes live. Then you're gonna be promoting it during the time that it is live. Then you're gonna be spending time shipping out all of those orders afterwards. And that's why I just didn't have the time to do it. I think for a Kickstarter, you gotta be putting in at least, a good 3 months of energy and time.
Is the payout additional worth it?
Yeah, yeah, it is. If you have a good product.
That's the key, right? So, what other small projects do you have like in the back burner that you for the small projects to keep you going through the remainder of Montague Mouse and then into uh, the next big project?
I'm trying to not do a lot of side projects this year, so I'm gonna be doing my drawing adoption event that I do every year. I'm gonna have like Christmas sales and Halloween sales. But other than that, I might do the sketchbook. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do it this year. I might. It's one of those things I can do if I need to. But other than that, I'm not gonna have side projects this year. I wanna just focus on getting this book done now because if I don't hunker down and commit to it, it's gonna be another year and it won't be done.
But you do have a side project. You mentioned to us before you started that you're going to be starting teaching. Are you comfortable talking about that at all?
Yeah. Well, that's not a side project though. That's just work.
It's aside from the individual projects.
Yeah, that it is. Yeah, I've been hired by a university in Ohio to teach art branding, which is basically gonna be similar to what we've been talking about here. You know, it's how to do all the things as an artist to build up your art career and make a living.
And that course is only 1 hour long, right?
Yeah, I wish. Gonna be 3 hours a week for a whole semester, so it'll be fun.
What topics do you generally think you're going to be covering? Have you already written out the syllabus?
And no, I have to have that done tomorrow, so I probably should get to it.
You have to have that done by tomorrow?
Yeah.
How
'cause
many
class
how
starts
many weeks did you say?
like what do you mean how many weeks? How many weeks the class is?
Yeah.
Oh, it runs until May, I think.
Oh, okay.
So
So
it's like wait, I don't know, math, a lot of weeks.
But you have to plan out the weeks ahead of time by tomorrow.
Yeah, but that's just like a syllabus is not that in depth. That's like an overall, you know. So it'll be like, okay, this week we're going to be looking at Instagram. Next week we're going to be looking at how to set up your website. The following week, maybe we're going to look at how to set up a shop. So it doesn't take that long to write the syllabus itself. The more in-depth assignments and stuff like that, I can do week to week as the program, you know.
Okay, I see. So you don't have to have the all of the content that you're going to be delivering.
No, then I would have started way earlier.
You were the wrong guest to talk to about time management.
Syllabus is just like a brief overview of what the goals are for the class, what the major things we're going to be working on are, how grading is done, and things like that.
Do you have any experience teaching prior to this, or is this your first foray into it?
I've done some mentorships before that. Yeah.
So these were individual mentorships rather than a group mentorship, right?
Yeah, they were.
How did you? We had Paul Canavan on a few weeks ago talking about his mentorship. So I'm curious about how you went about doing your mentorship. How did you price it? How did you determine how much time the person got, and what did you cover? That sort of thing.
The mentorships I did were learning how to draw with a couple of students, and it was $50 for 1 hour a week. And it was ongoing for as long as they felt like they got something out of it. One of them stayed on for, I think, almost a year, I want to say. She stayed on for a long time. And the other one wanted to stay on for longer, but she ran out of money. She had like a lot of vet bills and things to take care of. But I'm still in touch with both of them, and they really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it too. I made really good friends with them, so it was really nice.
Yeah, that's I guess one way to make friends as introvert. You do it through online mentorships.
Yeah.
And this was fundamentals of drawing rather than some advanced how to get work as Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, one of them is a woman called Sabina Francisco, and she does these really cute animal drawings. She draws traditionally. Right now, she's experimenting with gouache, but because I did a lot of animal drawings and stuff for my Montague Mouse book, she'd seen those, and she reached out and asked if I would help her improve her work. And a lot of what the stuff we went over was just, you know, how to get proper volume in your drawing, and how to do light and shadow, how to fix the anatomy, things like that.
But none of these mentorships were related to what you're doing with your course.
No.
So where did you start to build up this base to do your education, your course? Is this from your past experience, from your personal experience, and then a little bit from the course you took last year?
No, I I didn't plan it out at all. I was just I was recommended by another artist that works at the university to the chair of the department, because of some online discussions we had in Discord, and he was like, "Oh, hey, Kiri's perspective would be really great for the students, so why don't we make her a teacher and we can set up a class, based around these conversations that we'd had." It was Bastien Deham. I don't know how to. He's French.
Those names will all get you.
Yeah, he's a French Magic the Gathering artist. And yeah, it was really interesting because his business is structured around just doing client work, whereas mine is, based around you doing my own stuff instead. So yeah.
And most artists these days are trying to, well, not, I want to say most, but many artists these days are trying to branch out away from being under the control of a corporate entity that has final say over what you do and initial say over what you do too. And I don't know. It seems like it's harder for artists to figure out how to make money when it doesn't involve somebody telling you what to do.
Yeah, and that makes sense though, because it's a lot to come up with just stuff on your own and find out. You got to wear so many hats. Like one thing is creating the artwork, which in itself is really difficult, and learning how to draw and paint. But then you got to do all the marketing. Then you got to take care of all the taxes. Then you got to learn how to run a business. And it's just a lot. And maybe you're going to have to learn how to do proper photography too, or maybe you got to learn how to do videos to promote your artwork. So it's a hard thing to do.
Looking back on it, is there anything advice that you would have given to yourself at the start of your career?
Yeah. And this is just personal to me, but learn the fundamentals of drawing. I was not very dedicated to learning that early on, and my work suffered from that for years before I kind of finally overcame that hump.
So this was it. Were you in the "It's Just My Style" gang to defend against things that people said didn't look right?
I didn't know that it was okay to use reference for a long time. I was like, oh no, using reference is cheating. It is not. Do use reference.
Where did that notion get started? I would love to know the origin story of that, because it doesn't even make sense logically. Like if you just think about it.
Yeah, it doesn't. Like even you look at Renaissance painters, yeah, they use reference. They had models. But I think it came from people that don't know how art is made, and I based that on where I grew up. I grew up in a tiny little village in Denmark, and I could tell from comments my dad made and stuff like that there's not a lot of understanding of how artwork is actually created. So my parents would tell me if I was drawing after something, they'd be like, did you come up with that yourself or did you copy it from something else? So if you're looking at photos and learning how to paint something and then you feel like, oh, I didn't make it myself, so I can't learn. And then you don't have a visual library, and then it gets really hard to paint a hand because you don't know what it looks like. Yeah, use reference.
That makes sense. It goes right in line with the power that the external world has over artists. I say external world, I guess non-artists, the people that
you still see that on social media today when people are like, oh, you're using reference? Yeah, because you have to if you want to make good work.
Well, and the whole conversation about pricing, how much art should cost, what your personal your sense of personal value is, or the value of your artwork based solely on the opinion of others. And I mean, I guess the psychology. Yeah,
there's so many artists that are underselling themselves to young artists that are inexperienced, because art is a luxury item. It just is. It's not required for you to live and breathe, like food is. It's a luxury good.
I hear that, and I think I hear the devil's advocate that's out there always saying, I don't need this, and I can either buy a video game for $50 that'll entertain me for 100 hours, or I can get an artist, and I'm hoping that I can get 10 hours of your time for $50. It's just
yeah, but you can't.
Unfortunately, they sometimes can. That's the sad part, right? You go look up on Twitter, and you're like, Well, what I've been doing is I'll look at the top post on r/D&D, and it'll usually be some artist. Then I'll look at their Twitter page where they're advertising their prices, and it's under $100. I'm like, how are you making this for under $100?
Yeah, and I mean, for many young artists, it's also that they're building their body of work, they're learning, um, and like I'm not going to fault them for it because I think it's a mentality that's so prevalent on the internet, and as you get better at drawing and painting, you might run into that you don't have enough time to fulfill all these commissions you're getting because your prices are too low. Um, and you're not making enough to make your rent and pay your bills because your prices are too low. So if you're finding yourself working like 80-hour weeks and you're still struggling financially, like you got to look at, okay, maybe it's better to do two commissions for people that are willing to pay a higher rate than to do 20 commissions for people that oftentimes don't appreciate you because they're paying so little for it. Um, so yeah, it's a hard lesson to learn, but
I think there's also a rule of thumb for people who are using slots. I don't generally advocate using slots, but a lot of people do. Like they'll say, I have 10 slots open. And then they'll open them with low prices, and then they'll fill those 10 slots in a day, and then spend the next 6 weeks fulfilling those 10 slots. And it's like, what additional benefit do they give you being full on the first day if you're not getting to them for 6 weeks? You could raise your prices, and as long as you have one commission in your queue at all times and always are working on the next thing, it doesn't matter how many more you have behind that. For whatever reason, we can't hear you right
I
now.
think your mic cut out. Yeah.
it's working now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Another thing is that rather than doing commissions like that, what kind of work could you do if you're doing your personal work and selling prints of that instead?
Right, because if you're doing a commission for $40, why not just sell a print of something you actually loved for $40 multiple times over?
Yeah, exactly. Because with commissions, it's really hard to sell prints of those unless you're working for something like Magic the Gathering or D&D. Whereas, like if you're painting some person's D&D character, for instance, it's going to speak very deeply to the person whose character that is, but to a lot of other people, it's just not going to have that same pull. Um, but if you can make personal work that you're putting your own stories and time into that people can connect with, you can suddenly sell a lot of prints instead.
Yeah, that's another problem with commissions. It's deeply personal. So the person that's getting it, that's additional value for them, but it's not necessarily additional value for everybody else, unless they're like most of the commissions that I'm familiar with are people getting D&D commissions, and that's great for that person. But unless it's an illustration that shows like a an illithid as the dungeon master or something, then it's generally not going to be uh, something that other people can relate to and appreciate enough to buy as a print. Uh, Unless you make some kind of dope ass paladin that's in heavy armor, and then everybody's like, yeah, I want to play that character. That's a bit differently from I don't know, but most characters will have like one or two quirks that just make them so personal that nobody else wants to buy it. Like it has multicolored eyes, or a modern haircut, what have you.
Yeah, it's that, and that's just the thing with commissions, but you got to find out, like, is that what you want to be painting other people's characters? And some people do, and they enjoy doing that, and that's great. Go for it if that's what you love doing. But there's also the alternative route of creating your own thing. Another thing is you can use those commissions to build up a portfolio to then submit to, for instance, Wizards if you want to do D&D stuff.
And even then, when you support the Wizards, when you submit to Wizards, if it's not the exact style that they're looking for, it doesn't matter that it's the same subject matter.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like with them, there's definitely a style guide that you got to follow.
I guess there is the potential to kill multiple birds if you want to. You could be practicing your Magic the Gathering style and, trying to make prints on the other end and fulfilling commission orders. And maybe there's some room to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's definitely like place where you can hit several birds with one stone in that way.
So we're out of questions as far as the predefined list. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover today?
I think we've covered pretty much everything. Is there any questions in the chat or anything?
There's been a lot of chatter, but not direct questions. But we can always call out to the audience. Like, Allie, do you have any questions for Kiri?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions,
How are you
now would be
doing,
the
Allie?
time. Thinking of coming to a close relatively soon, and you've talked a little bit about your, the projects that you have coming up or that you're working on now. Can you just shout out real quick? We will have like all of your information in the show notes, but give us a quick rundown on the places where people can find you or where you would like people to find you.
KiriLeonard.com, and then Kiri Leonard on all the social media platforms. So Instagram at Kiri Leonard, Twitter at Kiri Leonard. Yeah.
Allie wants to know, how
Allie
did
asks-
Lock the Legend start?
Lock the Legend started on an online role-playing server 15, 20 years ago, and Neverwinter Nights role-playing server. And I had a lot of fun with the character at that time. And then later on, when I moved to the US and became an artist and all of that happened, we started a D&D group with some friends, and I made a dwarf character that I couldn't get into. And then our DM was like, why don't you, play a character you played before that you enjoy? And I revived her, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should paint her. And so I painted her, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should turn this into a whole thing. Written book and all of that stuff, and then it just grew from there. And now I have a lot of illustrations and things, and I'm gonna be creating a lot of D&D content surrounding that project for other people to enjoy too.
Nice. Does it adhere then to the world that the character was created in, or is it sort of like something new of your own making, a more homebrew kind of thing? Or
It's a homebrew world, absolutely. It's based around our D&D campaign. The story is, and the content I'm going to be making for it is going to tie into kind of traditional D&D stuff, though. I want to make item cards that people can use, portrait packs, mood pieces for their own games and things like that.
Question from the chat: why onions?
Why not onions? Onions are really good for you. I love onions.
I was hoping that there would be some context for the inside joke.
So the character Lock the Legend is obsessed with onions and she eats raw onions like snacks.
Like an apple.
Yeah, like an apple. She'll eat an onion like an apple. That was a quirk she had like way back on the role-playing server, because I guess I was trying to gross people out. It worked too. And then it just became a thing with her.
Just weeping. Everybody around her is just like crying from her breath.
Oh, yeah. She was a barbarian with a low charisma back then.
That makes sense.
Fantastic.
And it makes sense to delve into the rich information that comes from a D&D campaign. I mean, that's how The Expanse started.
Yeah, there's like so much. I mean, isn't Lord of the Rings just like a giant D&D campaign in a way?
Yeah, and the wizard died halfway through.
Yeah, so shout out to D&D and its capacity to generate new ideas. We were talking about where to come up with ideas before, so if you're looking for ideas, start a D&D campaign.
Yeah, it's storytelling. I mean, it's awesome, especially if you have like some good people to engage with.
Well, I think that we are at the end point, and so we just have one more question for you, unrelated to career or business or anything. What's something that's happening in the world that you're excited about?
It's snowing in Texas.
We got to get it where we can. So that's perfectly valid.
That's insane. And you're southern. You're like that's middle Texas. It's not even northern Texas.
Snow is here. It's so awesome. My whole yard is covered in snow. I'm so excited. I love snow.
That's a lot of snow.
Yeah, we got like 4 inches, I think, which, never having snow. Yesterday it was like sunny and really warm out. So,
That's more snow than we had in Baltimore so far this year.
oh wow.
I'm happy for you, but
But
I'm
yeah,
also
it's
I'm
been a
also
hard year
worried.
for everyone last
Yeah,
year.
yeah. I'm worried that that's just another sign of the apocalypse. It's, it's
Uh,
sunny and hot
it's
one day
coming.
and snowing the next day. Well,
But other than that, I mean, it's there's never been a better time to be an artist, man. Like
mm,
you can make a living painting unicorns now, and yeah, it's awesome.
well, what was awesome is getting to talk to you, and we really appreciate the time. I really look forward to seeing all the cool stuff that you're going to be coming out with, and I say this every time, but I mean it every time. I love it if you wanted to come back and talk to us a little bit more specifically about, the marketing and branding and all of the stuff that you're going to be discussing in this course that you're going to be teaching, because that's a huge part of what we like to talk about and help other people understand. So, not to put you on the
Yeah,
spot, you don't have to answer yes or no now, but I'm just putting it out there.
but thank you so much for having me on. It's been really fun. It's been nice to get to know you, and I look forward to seeing your tarot project because now you got to do it, right?
I know.
You're gonna do the tarot deck.
Yeah, the more that I say it out loud, exactly.
Yeah, I expect it done in 2 years, so start planning out those deadlines.
And the How I Learned to Draw video.
Yes, and that. Yeah, I want to see that. I want to see that next week, so get on it.
Yeah. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Well, yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm going to wave goodbye and hit the record button.